Welcome back to the Consciously Creating Your 2025 Online Summit. I hope you've been enjoying the interviews so far and having a lot of fun with the activities and everything else. And get ready. I hope you have your favorite beverage and your pen and paper and whatever you need, because I know you're going to get lots of wisdom and insight from Tammy. So welcome to Tammy Adams. She is my go-to. Those of you who have worked with me for a long time, if you're really stuck in grief and stuff, yes, I can help you, but I send you to Tammy because I love her. I trust her. She's who I would send my own sister, brother, or husband or father to, right? And so we're so blessed to have Tammy on the summit today to chat with us about the energies around 2025, what's coming up, and really more importantly, how you can build your toolbox so that you can get through with flying colors, stronger, more intuitive, and more enlightened and lighter than ever. So Tammy, welcome to the summit.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
I always love having you here.
Interesting. My nose is itchy. What does that mean?
I'm not sure. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Money.
Well,
I don't know where that came from.
Awesome. I love it. Share with me too. Ready? We'll all do this together. Okay, Tammy, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and the beautiful work that you do so everybody can quickly get acquainted with who you are?
Okay. Well, I started my career in education. I have worked at all levels of education from birth right up to post-secondary. I've acquired a considerable amount of experience in the field of human resources. But I was really frustrated with policy and procedure. And so I decided to go out on my own. And initially, I was doing life coaching and I was doing energy work like Reiki, access bars, meditation. And I was working with a particular client who was really stuck. And somebody suggested that I look into grief recovery. And what the readers or the listeners need to understand is I don't go to funerals, I don't go to cemeteries. So I really resisted this suggestion. I said, no, 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 that's not me. And they were very persistent and encouraging. So I reached out to the Institute, and after about an hour of conversation, they said, you're already doing it. You just don't know you are. And so that started me on this journey of grief recovery, not only professionally, but personally. And, I still use all the other tools in my toolbox, but basically this has moved to the forefront of what I do.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what I love about this is that often when I'm working with clients and they're stuck, it doesn't matter whether they've been through a big divorce, whether their child went away to school, whether they lost their job, whether they've had a fight with their mom. It always comes back to grief. It always comes back to, that intention that we put out to the world and it didn't work out the way we thought it was going to work out. And we're sad, right? And it gets masked by all these other things. But it's such a huge part of this human experience.
It is. And, I've had several psychologists, licensed psychologists, tell me that between 95 and 99.9% of what shows up is unresolved emotionally based. So if that is the statistic, then why are we ignoring this? Why are we telling people to push these emotions down and ignore them? Because the irony of the whole situation is up until we were about 3, we knew how to do this normally and naturally. And yet we learn from people we respect and trust, and they learned from people they respected and trusted. And so we just keep passing down this information that's not helpful. And then we stop or we prevent our bodies from just naturally grieving things that we're disappointed in, regrets we have, losses of loved ones. And it just starts to accumulate negatively in our body.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like this should be the most natural conversation, and yet it's the most off limit topic. And yet, here's the irony of the whole thing. If your child came home and had a great day at school, you're not going to stop them from sharing. You're going to encourage them. You're going to listen. You're going to hold space for them. But if they come home and they've had a really bad day, say they've been bullied on the playground, well, what we've been taught is here, have a cookie, you'll feel better. Let's replace the loss. Let's ignore the emotion. And so we learn at a very early age that for whatever reason, people don't want to hear our sad story.
Yeah. And I'm betting. Like, I'm not a betting person usually, but I would bet money right now that with everybody listening, if you haven't experienced yourself, you know someone who has experienced losing a pet, and it just, that's okay. We'll just get a new puppy. Like, and I don't think there's I don't think there's many more heartbreaking things in life than losing a pet. It
Yeah.
resonates with people on a whole different level. I can't tell you how many people who've come to see me and they're getting this reading and they're loving that they got a message from dad and from grandma. But when their dog comes through, well, that's the fireworks and the tears just start, right? Because that's the grief they weren't allowed to honor. That's the piece that, okay, we'll just replace it. Let's move on. It's uncomfortable. Let's move on. And so, what I love about the work that you do, what I love about the work that I do, what I love about the work that many of us are doing right now is we're not saying, okay, just put on your big girl panties. Let's move on. We're saying, okay, let's deal with that shit and get through it because there's so much more to you underneath that that's not shining as a result of being stuck under all these pushed down emotions.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not a secret that over the last few years, there have been a lot of shifts, changes, quite frankly, reasons to grieve, reasons people are frightened and unsure about their footing in the world, right? That
Yeah.
whole love your root chakra is a really great theme right now, right? And so I imagine that in your work and you in helping people, they're not just coming to you because they lost their job or because they lost their mom. There's a lot of layered grief there, I would imagine. And so, what do you find is like the biggest thing coming up the last few years? And if you were to know, what are some of the blocks it's causing them in everyday life? If that makes sense to you.
It does. I think one of the blocks is the fact we don't understand what grief is, and so we don't recognize that we've got it. So let's start there. So grief is the normal natural reaction to an emotional loss of any kind, a change in something that was familiar, things that we wished had been better, unrealized dreams, unsaid communications. So that really, like if the listeners pass their life experiences through those five statements, well, you could probably check off one or several of those boxes. But when people come to me now to work with grief, or work through their grief, I initiate the conversation by saying, you may or may not want to explore your pandemic experience because we have been grieving this on a global level. Number one, people don't recognize it. Number two, I found that people who were already filled to capacity with unresolved grief, this has pushed them over the edge. But if you go back to those five statements, an emotional loss, check. A change in something that was familiar, well, that changed for all of us. Things we wished had been better, different, or more, unrealized hopes, dreams, and expectations. And for the first time in my lifetime, we weren't allowed to disagree. We couldn't communicate our emotions and our thoughts. So, really, the pandemic is one of those few life experiences that checks off all five boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and it doesn't matter what side of the narrative you sit, but in order for us to heal collectively as humanity and move forward, we're going to have to grieve our pandemic experience. Because otherwise, how are we possibly going to come back together again? And honestly, we need to. We need to heal and we need to come back together again.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my work, I'm seeing this a lot within families and within couples because new routines got established. So I have husbands missing their wives and
Right.
wives missing their husbands, even though they live in the same home, because they got so used to being separate in their own home
Yes.
that coming back together again has been a big challenge for people. And so I love the stuff you're sharing right now because, we aren't just, I'm not just Sam. I'm Sam that is Chris's wife, and I'm Sam that has 5 kids, and I'm Sam that, loves to go feed homeless people. And, I'm Sam that loves roller coasters but has a brain injury, so I'm not allowed to anymore. Like we are so all these different layers to us. And sometimes when we focus on healing, we just take one. We just take the one little snippet and say, okay, well, I had a divorce. I'm going to heal the divorce. But it's never just the divorce.
Well, and Sam, you touched on something. I'm just going to expand on it just a little bit. When the mandates, restrictions, whatever you want to call them, came in, a lot of people were forced to go home to work, right? And if your personality is one where work and home are separate boxes, well, that was a real button pusher. So then you have 3 to 4 years to adjust to this change. People start to realize, oh, wait a minute, if I set my office up in the garage, I can still commute to work, right? You're walking across the driveway. And people started to realize, oh, that physical commute, that 2 or 3 hours every day I spend in the car, it's now gone. And they started to realize that, over lunch, they could put dinner on or they could throw a load of laundry in the washing machine or whatever. Well, what's happened now is now companies are saying, okay, we want you back in the office. And this has really created a lot of resistance on the part of the employees, and employers are losing employees because they're being forced to go back. And so now a lot of companies are creating a hybrid model where, okay, we require you to be here 2 days a week, but you can work from home 3. But again, those are changes in what had become familiar. We're grieving the better, different, the unrealized, the unsaid communications. So again, if you don't recognize that this is a grieving experience, you literally could lose your job over it, just over the anger of, okay, first I had to do this, and now I have to do this, and now, and yet if you process those emotions, you kind of wipe the slate clean. And now you're in a position of choice versus reaction.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And so 2 parts to that. The one thing I want to add on to is people who are really social that missed that connection at work with this 2 days a week, they're still not getting that. So yes, they're having to go back to work, but they're not building those bonds or seeing the same people the way that they did before. So it's not even meeting that need for them, right?
No.
And then there's this other piece of I know one of the things I do is I do timeline therapy right at the beginning of a coaching relationship. Let's just clear the clutter and, so that we can focus on what you want. And so many people, when you work through the stuff, when you clear it all, you might not want that job anymore. You might not want that relationship anymore. And then what do you do, right? So it's a really interesting dynamic. And certainly we're in such a unique place and the world is transforming.
Yeah.
Globally is transforming in our communities, in our countries, our provinces, our states. Everything is transforming. Banking is transforming. Institutions are transforming. Education is certainly transformed. The family is transformed. And there's this longing for what once was, but how can we make it better? And how can we bring it forward? And so we've got all of this going on. And sometimes people feel powerless in that. And so what I would like to suggest, and I think you'll agree with me, Tammy, is that the one thing you can control is how you're resolving all of and processing all of this stuff within. And that puts you in a clearer space to make decisions that better you and your family.
And I think a really important element of that is seeking support in helping to move through that transition. we've been so conditioned to think that, oh, I can't invest that money in myself. I can't invest the time, or, other things need my attention, that sort of thing. But when you enlist the support of, a coach or whoever it is that you're going to enlist the support of, what you do is you save money. You get the tools that you need to move forward. And I guess that's the key. You move forward, because if you keep doing the same things that you've been doing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. And so, because we're going through such a transformational um, experience on a human level, this is where those people who have taken the journey before you, we've made the mistakes. We've tested the tools. We've accessed the coaches and the practitioners. And, much like yourself, what I have now in my back pocket is this great roster of professionals who I know, I trust, and I can refer. And I think you'll probably agree, when you refer someone to work with someone, that warm introduction, that warm referral helps that person to get over the resistance because it came from a trusted source. But I see so many people trying to do it alone. I didn't do it alone. I just kept reaching out and reaching out and reaching out, and step by step by step, I found my way to where I am today. And
That's
I'm grateful for every single person who helped me along the way, right?
I love that. And you know what? I can say I didn't reach out for help. I wasn't somebody in my earlier years taught that that was okay. And I very much had this view that I was invisible. So who's going to want to help me anyway? I need to just plow through and do it. Right. And I'm so grateful that someone decided to drive high and almost kill me because I had to ask for help. Right. I was put in that position of being unconscious most of the time. I had to learn with getting uncomfortable, being vulnerable. And that road led me to you. That road led me to many people, right? Because I wouldn't have transformed from social work and education into coaching and training, which I wouldn't have met you otherwise, right? So I'm grateful for it every day.
Me
But it's
too.
interesting because having lived that life of feeling so invisible that no one's going to help you and you have to do it all yourself, and how much energy it takes to do it all yourself, and feeling like you never quite reach the bar. And I compare that journey to a journey of, yes, there's struggle, but I can reach here for this help, and I can reach here for this help. And these people are going to feed me, and these people are going to nourish me, and these people are going to teach me. And I can take all of this and move it forward on my journey. What a huge difference in results that gives you. You go from that survival of getting through the day to day to the thriving. And so I love that you bring that up, because everybody's journey's been a little different. But I find consistently when people access resources, regardless of where it is, and it means something to them, they always say, why didn't I do that sooner? Why didn't I just access that help sooner? And so if that's you, if you're in this place where you're feeling really stuck, this is your invitation. Access the help. Like, do what you need to do, because you're worth that. And the road is a lot easier once those tools are put into place.
And I want to bounce off something you said, because I think it's really, really important. Yes, you had a car accident, which drove you into making that change in your life. I had a job that brought me to my knees,
Yeah.
right? By the time I met you, like, I'd gone through this year of on the floor in a puddle, not knowing if I could ever get up again. And the reason I bring this up is you and I were both those people who needed that crisis in order to make the changes that we needed to make in
Yeah,
our
we
lives.
needed the spiritual 2x4. We didn't listen to the whispers.
No, no, but most people fall into that category because, from a subconscious perspective, our mind will do whatever it takes to keep us locked in the status quo. But the message I want your listeners to walk away with is, you don't have to be Sam or I. you can choose to make this transformation without the crisis.
Absolutely.
But that's something we were never taught. That message has come out in the last, say, 10 years,
Yeah.
maybe. But Sam, when you and I were going through personal development, that wasn't even on the radar screen. And so you're right. We needed that 2x4 in order to, are you going to keep doing the same thing, or are you going to actually make a change in your life?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the transformative things that's happening right now. Yes, we're being asked to clear the deck so that we can move forward into this new way of being. But the new message is you don't need that crisis. All you need is to choose to take those steps on your own.
Yeah, I love it. And we all get the whispers, right? We all get
Oh,
those whispers of, maybe it's around, oh, maybe you shouldn't eat that anymore. Or, call this friend, right? Or, no, turn left today on the way home.
yeah.
Or, oh, that's interesting. I keep getting the same word over and over again. I never heard it before, but now I've heard it 3 times this week. We all get those whispers, and it's about just trusting that those messages are coming forward for a reason, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's move forward a little bit. So we've got this brink of 2025. It is, I think it's safe to say this is a whole new era. We are moving into a new way of being. And I'm curious to know, what would you say are some of the biggest tools people can use to move forward into this new energy that we're going through?
I think there's three. There's three that I personally believe in. The first one is we need to clear our past. We need to resolve any unresolved emotions. We need to finish any unfinished business. That's a very low vibrational energy. And 200 resonates at about 200. Like that's the changing point. But grief, I think, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's 75 or lower. Like it's a very low vibrational frequency. And the reason I say that is you can't step into the present, you can't see forward into the future till you clear the past, because otherwise, every decision you're making is being filtered through the shame, the regret, the disappointment, the anger. So, the absolute first thing I would say is do some emotional housekeeping. So, that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is know who you are. Now, we all say we know, but when we ask that question, it's like, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a brother, I'm an accountant, I'm an engineer. No, 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 no. Get a personality assessment done. You are a whole bunch, we call it, your plaid. You've got them all in you. But there's one core personality trait that is driving everything you do. It drives how you learn, how you communicate, how you show up in the world. And so, what you want to know is, what is your value system? What are your belief systems? Really know that in such a way that it creates a blueprint for you to move forward. The idea of having a personality assessment done is so that you can step into the flow. You can begin that next step writing with your dominant hand. Like when we write with our dominant hand, it's fast, it's easy, it's quick, we don't have to think about it. When we're writing with the other hand, yeah, we can get the job done, but it's a struggle and it takes time. And we have to think about it. And it's really not that pretty when we get it done, anyways. So, first thing is clear the past. Second thing is know who you are. And then the third thing is, and this is where coaching really comes in, is learn those mindset tools so that you can leverage the power of this incredible mind you've got, because your outer world is nothing more than a reflection of what you think, feel, and believe all day long. So you need to access someone who can teach you those mindset tools so that, envision a hologram. You're creating that future. And if I'm right in my belief system, don't know if I am, but if I'm right in my belief system, come 2025, those manifestations that used to take us months and years to create, it's going to be that fast. So you're going to want to be really aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what it is that you're creating. So I guess all of those things would allow you to create the future intentionally.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, question for you. When would you say that you incorporated these ideas into your world? And then what are some of the things you're now aware of having shifted? Because, I've been with you a little while. We shift and we transform ourselves, we reinvent ourselves. And you, from observing and interacting with you, you've always been calm, you've always been fun, you've always been somebody I adore. But you have this confidence about you now. You have this wisdom about you now. And maybe it's just me, but I think maybe some of these things you're talking about have led you to that place of this wisdom and confidence. What do you think?
I would agree. And I think if I had to choose one, if I mean all three of those, and you have been one of those greatest teachers, and you were the one who certified me as a coach practitioner. So, I'm not saying that that wasn't important. It was, and we used to joke in there about how I needed that piece of paper to feel that, I could do what I was doing, because I was still in that mindset that I felt that I had that imposter syndrome. Yes, I know how to do this, but how do I prove to other people that I can do that? And I think the biggest shift came for me with grief recovery, because so many of those beliefs were being driven by the unresolved emotions that dated back to my childhood.
Yeah.
I shared that invisibility with you. Yes, I grew up in a house where, I had a nice house, I had clothes, I had food, but my personality, I crave relationship, I crave connection. Like, if you're my friend, you are my friend, 100% and more. And I grew up in a home where love seemed conditional. And I'm really not sure at this point in my life if I still have ever heard my parents say that they love me, right? So I went through life seeking that external validation that I had worth. But when I healed the pain and I let go of the expectations, the unfulfilled expectations, both of myself and of other people, when I released that, I was actually able to step into my power. And then all of those things I learned from you, and all of those other lessons that I learned from other mentors and teachers along the way, they just fell into place, because now I could accept them and embrace them as my own. Because those beliefs, that broken heart, that unresolved past, I'd cleared the deck, and I could really step into who I was.
Beautiful. I love that. And I want to echo, and I say this with love with Tammy, because yes, we joked about the piece of paper. And I can remember, when I was told after I was in an accident, you can't return to work. Like, we're not letting you ever return back to your job. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And I had that mindset that so many have, like, oh, I need the certification. And Chris had said to me, well, you've been doing readings for 20 years. Why don't you just do readings full time? And I'm like, but I do that because I love that. He goes, well, why can't you love your work? And I'm like, well, you can't go to university for being a psychic medium, Chris. Right? That was the first thing. And he's like, well, there's got to be somebody who'll certify you. If you need a piece of paper in front of you, go take a course somewhere. And what I want to say, it's never about that piece of paper, ever. It won't matter how many pieces of paper you accumulate or how many pieces of papers you don't have. I want to really stress that, because some of the most brilliant people I've ever met don't have a single piece of paper. It's about the journey and taking the learning from the journey and accumulating the wisdom. I've been a teacher to Tammy. She's been a teacher to me, but we've both had many, many teachers. And the lady down the street can be a teacher to you. That child in the supermarket can be a teacher to you. And we've been raised with this mentality of you need the piece of paper, right? And the
Yeah.
piece of paper doesn't give us our wisdom. It doesn't give us our intuition. It doesn't give us the next step forward. Your soul, your truth, your own healing, that's what propels those steps forward. And so I'm so grateful you shared that story, because I know so many people are going to identify with what you shared. And, even around having childhood, that accumulating trauma, people associate, oh, well, it had to have been really, really awful to have accumulated trauma. No, it can be that silent child in the home. It could be the parents who loved you enough that they worked 24/7 to provide for you because that's what they knew how to do. And you didn't get that emotional. That's still trauma. There's still so many different ways that we accumulate trauma that need resolved, and the grief that comes with it. And that brings us back to the beautiful work you do, Tammy.
Well, and I think, there's value to be said. Not that I'm not saying one is worse or better than the other, but if someone has been physically beaten, you can see the pain.
Yeah.
You can see the bruises, you can see the cast, you can see whatever the result is. Emotional pain is so hard to see. And most people, their response to it is just get over it. Like, just get over it. Like it's in the past. The other thing I want to go back to what you just said, because I think it's so important, is you've been doing readings for years because you enjoy it and you're good at it. We have been taught to search for our purpose, and we expect it to be something life-changing, something big. The fireworks are going to go off, the choir's going to sing. We keep searching and searching and searching. But the irony of all of that, your purpose, the reason you are here, is that thing that you find so easy that you take it for granted because, well, if I can do it, everyone can do it.
Yeah.
And, I really want your listeners to walk away with that message. Your purpose is that thing you do with your dominant hand. It's the thing where time flies, where it's so easy, you don't have to think about it. If you ask me to add two numbers together, I'll get a different number even if I'm using a calculator, right? I can't do numbers. So I look at an accountant and I go, "Oh my goodness, you're a magician," right? And they go, "What, are you kidding? This is so boring. I can do this in my sleep." But don't ask me to support somebody emotionally because I just don't have the bandwidth to do
Yeah.
that. And yet I love what I do, just like you love what you do. And so as we move into this new way of being, stop looking to learn something that will become your purpose and start going within and ask yourself, what's easy for me?
Yeah.
What do I love to do? That's what you're seeking. You're seeking that answer.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I just love it. And I'm sure that there are so many people right now who are watching saying, okay, I'm hearing the message, right? And just tapping into the things that they're really good at. And I'm going to challenge each of you, what are the 3 top things that you can do easily and effortlessly? And even, right now, just for fun, Tammy, what are the 3 things you do easily and effortlessly?
Me, I would say one of my superpowers is I seem to make people feel comfortable quickly. They seem to trust me quickly, which in my line of work is a really good thing to have.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a creative side to me that I'm just more embracing now than I ever have before. And I think the other thing, I don't know, some people may disagree, but I communicate. I love to teach and share what I know. Now, people may not agree with what I'm sharing, and that's fine. I mean, what I really encourage people to do is think for themselves and do their own research. But I cannot not learn something and not share it. Or I can't learn something, sorry, and not share it. And I think that's the teacher in me. But I so embrace being out of that traditional classroom and just being a student of life and sharing with the people who want to know. And I think that's the other thing that's come from the healing that I've done. I used to fall into that, I don't know if this is the right name for it, but that savior complex.
Mhm.
I wanted to save them. I wanted everybody to be happy. I wanted everybody to just have everything they needed. And what I've learned through grief recovery is that's a trauma response.
It is.
And I used to offer my advice and my support many times without it being solicited. And I'm sure that was received with resentment on the other end. I still love to support people and I still love to see them happy and enjoying life. But the difference is now I don't offer that unless I'm asked. And I think that's the big piece of healing. You're not trying to heal yourself by healing others, which is impossible to do because we've talked about this so many times. You can have the support, but the inner work is yours to do
Yeah.
and yours alone. And no one can do it for you. And so coming through to the other side of all these unresolved emotions, um, I just don't do that anymore. If you want my help, I'm happy to help you, but you've got to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you find that you've shifted that into your personal life too? Not just for work, but with your personal?
Absolutely.
Me too. I'm learning.
Oh, yeah.
Being a
Yeah.
mom of five, I've learned about myself that and you're gonna laugh because how many times I've said we're not fixers, we're helpers, right? So I've learned that in my home, I was the fixer.
Yeah.
And now that these children are adults, they really do not want Mama Bear to be a fixer. And
Right.
it's so funny. I had one of my kids this summer say, "I can see all the effort you've put in. You're doing really good. I can see that it's hard for you to not jump in. They're gonna be okay. Good job, Mom." And I was like, "Oh, it is. It's a big job to redo these patterns." But I had it down pat in my professional life. Helper, not a fixer, right? But to
Yeah.
see that manifest now and go, okay, same application. We just move it into the personal. We're all learning and growing and evolving at all times. So I thought you'd have a little giggle about my most recent growth with that too.
But it's true. As moms, we're wired. We're wired to be the peacekeeper. We're wired to be the helper, the person who gives the advice. And as our children move into adulthood, that too is a change in something that's familiar because we need to step into more of a mentor role, and that mentor role being there when they ask. And otherwise, it's hard, but letting them trip, letting them fall, letting them teach us some things
Yeah.
along the way, right? And stepping into that role of the observer. And you're right, I had to go through that too, right? And now that I'm a nana, even more grateful that I did because I have no desire to tell my daughter how to raise her son. None, zero. If she asks me, I'm happy to give her advice. But she's also raising a child in a world that's so different from the world I raised her in. I have to trust her instincts because her instincts will help her guide him in a way that, my resources may not be effective. So I'm grateful I learned that lesson before he came along, or I would have been right in there, do this, do that.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. And I think that even goes with everyone we interact with, um, is doing the best they can with what they've got. And they all have their own experience. And I'm definitely not perfect. I'm making the very most of this human experience. I screw up all the time. And it's okay. It's okay. To learn and grow in that way. And it can sometimes feel so easy to swoop in and go, I got this for you. Let me do this for you. And I'll admit, my closest friends sometimes I'll say, okay, which Sam would you like? Would you like me to swoop in and fix this all? Would you like me to make you a voodoo doll? Which, by the way, I don't ever make voodoo dolls. It's just a joke. Or do you want me just to sit here and listen and hold you? Or I can Uber you some ice cream. That works too, right? And so understanding that, there's lots we can do to help and love and support people without jumping in, and it all comes back to us all consciously creating our own life and taking the next step in front of us for what it is that we're building and creating in our lives. But thankfully, we all have Tammys in our world that are doing amazing work to help us get through some of those roadblocks, so that we can actually live a life with purpose and intention, feeling loved, whole, and ourselves. Because when you can step into a life feeling like you're actually you, my goodness, that's a game changer in the things that we can create.
Yes. And it's funny because that job that destroyed me, my boss, when he hired me, so I haven't said this publicly before, said it in my sessions, but not publicly. But he said to me, I don't like you. I don't want you here, and I'm being forced to hire you. And I said yes. Like, who would say yes? Well, I said yes because he didn't like me and I needed to fix that. And 5 years later, I realized there's no fixing it and I have no gas left in my tank. And so I am so grateful, much like you were with the car accident. I am so grateful I was brought to my knees because I will never give anyone that power over me again, ever. You know, it doesn't serve anyone. And it just puts that bushel basket over our light and doesn't allow it to shine. So, I think that's the other thing. Just saying that out loud, it's funny. An old belief just popped in my head and went, well, that's pretty arrogant of you to say, hiding your light. It just popped right in, right? Because we are so conditioned to keep that light under the bushel basket because, we shouldn't have that opinion of ourselves. But I think we should, because when we own our own power, we give other people permission to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
And we give them permission to ask for help if they don't know how to get that bushel basket off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Funny how that just popped right in.
I love it. Very divinely timed. And you know what? This is how limiting beliefs work. We can get excited. I know in my past, I'd have one come forward. I'm like, oh, darn, like I didn't want that there. It's not in alignment. But now I'm like, oh, thank you so much. That's another thing that I can, decide and hold it. Do I still believe this? Well, if I want to still believe it, I can hang on to it. But chances are I want to get rid of it. And that's why it came into our awareness in the first place, right? So yeah.
Exactly.
So we got to do that in real time with you, Tammy. It's already gone. You're good. Yeah, beautiful.
Uh,
So as we are embarking on this 2025, is there a particular word or intention or something that's helping to guide you that might inspire others?
I see 2025 as a rebuild. The word rebuild just keeps coming into my head and into my head. And in order for that rebuild to happen, everything has to be dismantled, which can be terrifying and scary, but it's necessary. But the other words that come to me when I think of rebuild is I get a sense of community, collaboration, tolerance, empathy, and compassion. And the dominant word next to rebuild is love. And if we can move into this place of service, of love, of compassion, of collaboration, then whatever is necessary to make that rebuild happen, I'm willing to embrace that because I am so looking forward to a different experience where we can really be free to be in service to others. And I really believe we're on the cusp of that. I believe that with all my heart.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that word rebuild. The one that's been coming up for me a lot since about July, August is personal responsibility.
Ah, yes.
And that matches well with what we've been talking about, but also partnering with that rebuild. If we can rebuild with personal responsibility to show up at the table with our skills, with our intention, my goodness, there's nothing we can't do together.
Well, and I think that's a really important message to leave the people with, because we have been conditioned for so long to hand the responsibility of our health, of our education, of our future, of our purpose. All you can just make a list as long as you want, but we've been conditioned to give that power away to someone else. And if part of the change that's coming is personal responsibility, if we all became responsible for our own lives, imagine how that community could be rebuilt in such a strong and positive way. I'm excited for what's coming.
Me too. Me too. Awesome. Tammy, thank you so much for being with us. And I know you'll be back for the Q&A on Wednesday night, so I'm excited for that too. And definitely, if anybody's wanting to connect with you, what are the best ways to reach you?
I would say one of the best ways is my website, which is tadams.ca. There's that you can communicate with me through there. My email is tdadams@rogers.com. And just look me up on all the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You'll either find me under Intuitive Understanding or Tammy, but there's a lot of cool posts that I put up on those social media platforms. So yeah.
Yep, I love looking at your Instagram and seeing your videos by the fire. I love it. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this chat. There's more to come, so stay tuned, and we will see you on the next one.